Imagine you're at, like, the most exclusive, high-end corporate gala of the year.
Oh, setting the scene. I like it.
Right. So we're talking billionaires, politicians, just the absolute elite of society. They're all clinking champagne glasses, wearing designer clothes, and, you know, basically congratulating themselves on a booming economy.
Sounds like a pretty comfortable room to be in.
Exactly. The keynote speaker is at the podium, everyone is cheering, and right in the middle of the speech, the heavy oak doors at the back of the ballroom just bang open.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, and this guy walks in wearing muddy overalls. He smells faintly of, like, livestock and crushed fruit.
Wow.
He totally ignores the security guards, walks right up to the microphone, taps it, and tells everyone in the room that their success is a complete shame, that their morality is utterly bankrupt, and their entire empire is about to come crashing down.
That is just a profoundly disruptive image. I mean,
Yeah.
I'd actually take it a step further. Yeah, it's not just someone crashing a party. It's someone telling the partygoers that the very foundation of their wealth is basically building their own guillotine.
That is the perfect way to frame it. Welcome to the deep dive, everyone.
Glad to be here.
Today, we are opening up a stack of research on a text that is roughly 2,800 years old, but somehow, I mean, it just reads like a modern political thriller.
It really does.
We're talking about the Book of Amos, and the premise here is just incredible. We have this rural sheep farmer, a guy who literally picks sycamore figs for a living.
Just a totally regular working class guy.
Right. And he leaves his small town, travels to the wealthiest, most powerful region of his day, and delivers this blistering critique to the elite. And in doing so, he basically kicks off an absolute literary revolution.
He really changes the game.
He does. Okay, let's unpack this, because if you want an aha moment about how ancient history directly mirrors our modern societal structures, you are definitely in the right place today.
Well, to figure out why this muddy farmer crashed the party, we first have to, look at the party itself.
Right, set the stage.
Exactly. We have to ground this in reality, establishing exactly when and where this collision happened. So we are looking at the 8th century BCE.
Let's pull up the geopolitical map for that era. So Amos is from a town called Tekoa, which is down in the southern kingdom of Judah.
Right.
But his target, like the place he travels to deliver this massive critique, is actually the northern kingdom of Israel.
And the timing of that journey is everything. We get these specific chronological markers in the text indicating that Amos operated during the reigns of King Uzziah in the south and King Jeroboam II in the north.
Okay.
And if we zoom out and look at the broader ancient Near East during this specific window, something highly unusual was happening.
What's that?
There was a period of rare, almost unprecedented regional stability.
Which usually means the big empires are, like, quiet.
That is the core driver of the boom. The two massive superpowers of the ancient world, so that's Assyria to the northeast and Egypt to the southwest, they were both distracted.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, they were experiencing these temporary periods of internal decline and political weakness. So with the geopolitical bullies basically off the playground, Israel and Judah were suddenly free to expand.
Ah, I see.
Trade routes opened up, territory was reclaimed, and massive amounts of wealth just started accumulating in the capital cities.
It's a classic Gilded Age scenario. On paper, the nation is thriving, right? The GDP is through the roof.
Absolutely.
But that glittering prosperity was masking a deep systemic rot, because the wealth wasn't trickling down, it was just being extracted from the poor. So you have this massive social inequity building up behind the scenes.
And we know this isn't just some, fable, because Amos anchors his entire ministry with a very specific physical timestamp.
Right, I read this part.
He states that his visions occurred 2 years before the earthquake.
That detail absolutely blew my mind.
It's incredible, isn't it?
It is, because modern geologists have actually found physical evidence in the Levant of a massive catastrophic seismic event that occurred right in the mid-8th century BCE.
Exactly.
It gives us this concrete timestamp to date his activity to roughly 760 to 750 BCE. It basically takes this story completely out of the realm of myth and places it squarely in recorded geology.
Right. It grounds the text in a traumatic, shared cultural memory. I mean, everyone reading that in the ancient world would remember the earthquake.
Oh, for sure.
And that adds a terrifying weight to his predictions of doom.
Okay, but here is where I have to push back on the traditional narrative just a little bit.
Bring it on.
We have this geological timestamp proving he was a real guy at a real time. But if Amos is just a humble herdsman, a guy whose resume is basically sheep and figs.
Great.
How do we explain the text itself? The poetry is structurally brilliant. The rhetoric is incredibly sophisticated. I mean, did he have a ghostwriter?
It's a great question.
How does a self-described rural laborer produce a literary masterpiece?
That tension right there is actually one of the most fascinating debates in biblical scholarship. The contrast between his rural background and the sheer genius of the poetry is it's pretty stark.
Yeah, it really doesn't add up at first glance.
Well, some scholars argue that the Hebrew word used for herdsman might actually imply a much more educated property-owning class.
Wait, really?
Yeah, think of like a wealthy sheep baron or an agricultural manager rather than a poor peasant just sleeping in the dirt.
Wait, are you telling me he wasn't a working class hero? Does that ruin the whole underdog story? Because I loved the idea of a completely uneducated guy just outsmarting all the elites.
Well, it doesn't necessarily ruin it, but it adds some nuance. He was still very much an outsider from the South coming into the affluent North.
Okay, that's fair.
But even if he was just a common laborer who was entirely self-taught, we have to remember that ancient texts weren't just written once and locked in a vault somewhere.
Oh, right.
We are looking at a living document. Amos basically functions as a bridge. Before him, you had the older oral traditions.
Like, guys just preaching in the streets.
Exactly. Prophets like Elijah or Elisha who were famous for performing miracles and speaking truth to power. But they didn't write books. Amos is the very first of the literary prophets.
Meaning he set the precedent for, like, every writing prophet that followed?
Exactly. And because he was the first, his initial spoken oracles were likely preserved, shaped, and expanded by a dedicated group of followers.
So they kept his words alive.
Right. After the northern kingdom of Israel eventually collapsed, which is exactly what Amos predicted, by the way refugees fled south to Judah, bringing his prophecies with them.
Wow.
And those later prophetic circles edited and codified the text over decades to ensure its survival, applying its lessons to their own generation.
That makes a lot of sense, actually. The core message is undeniably Amos, standing in the town square in the 8th century.
Right.
But the polished masterpiece we read today is the result of a living tradition protecting those words.
Precisely.
But to really grasp why his followers felt the need to preserve this message so fiercely, we have to look at what Amos was up against. I mean, what was the dominant mindset of the people he was yelling at?
Well, to understand the impact, you have to realize he was swimming in a massive, crowded sea of ancient polytheism.
Right, lots of gods.
Tons of them. The religious worldview of the 8th century BCE was fundamentally different from anything most modern people experience today.
Let's break down that worldview. Because in places like Assyria or Babylon, religion and state were completely fused, right?
Completely.
The king was the earthly agent of the supreme deity, meaning military expansion wasn't just a political strategy, it was literal obedience to the gods.
Yes.
And over in Egypt, you had this complex system focused on maintaining divine order in nature, with the pharaoh acting as the chief mediator.
Exactly. And closer to home in the Levant, you had a Canaanite-derived heritage. Every neighboring nation basically had its own national patron deity.
Okay, got it.
But what's crucial to understand here isn't the specific names of these gods, but the mechanics of how people actually interacted with them.
The day-to-day stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
Religion wasn't about personal spiritual growth or, moral self-reflection. It was intensely physical and practical.
The temples themselves are a great example of this, right? Because a temple wasn't a gathering place for a congregation to just sit in pews and listen to a sermon.
No, not at all.
The temple was literally considered the physical house of the deity.
Because in their minds, the deity actually resided in the cult statue.
Wow.
So the priests were not spiritual counselors. They were essentially domestic servants for the god.
That is wild.
Their daily job was to provide care. I mean, they had to wake the statue up, wash it, clothe it, and feed it through ritual sacrifices.
And beyond feeding the gods, they were completely obsessed with trying to figure out what the gods wanted to do next.
Right, trying to read their minds.
Yeah, I was looking at some of the divination techniques they used, and they are wild. The words alone are a mouthful. Like, what exactly is hepatoscopy?
Oh, hepatoscopy. That is a highly specialized practice where a priest would sacrifice a sheep, pull out its liver, and literally read the physical anomalies on the organ as a coded message from the gods.
Gross, but fascinating.
Very. They would map the liver to determine if they should go to war or plant crops.
Yeah.
They also used dream interpretation, and they even studied the flight patterns of birds to decode divine will.
If I can try an analogy here, it feels like this entire ancient religious model operates exactly like a cosmic vending machine.
Oh, a cosmic vending machine. How do you mean?
Well, it's a perfectly closed transactional system. You walk up to the deity, you insert your currency, which is like a slaughtered goat, a basket of grain, or maybe you pay a priest to read a liver,
Right.
and you just push the button for what you want. You select rain or agricultural success or a military victory.
Ah, I see where you're going.
You pay the fee, the god gets their meal, you get your blessing, and basically nobody gets struck by lightning.
That's a great analogy.
Hmm.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, you just described the core mechanism of ancient reciprocity.
Reciprocity, right.
The gods need food and housing, and humans need protection and rain. So as long as the elite are funding the temples and offering massive sacrifices, the gods should theoretically be thrilled.
Right, they're getting paid.
Exactly. Regardless of how those same elites treat the peasant farmers outside the temple gates.
And honestly, we still kind of do this today, don't we?
Oh, absolutely.
It's human nature to want a transactional universe. We think, I donated to charity this week, so why did my car break down? We want morality to just be a ledger.
We absolutely do. And that transactional nature is exactly what makes Amos so dangerous to the status quo.
Because he rejects it.
Entirely. He knew this cultural grammar perfectly. I mean, he grew up in it. But instead of playing along, he entirely subverted it. He basically walks into that metaphorical gala we talked about earlier and announces that the cosmic vending machine is unplugged.
He looks at all the priests and the wealthy elites doing their rituals perfectly and just tells them God actually hates their festivals.
Yes. He challenges the fundamental premise that wealth equals divine favor. To a prosperous 8th century Israelite, a booming economy was undeniable proof that their sacrifices were working and God was happy.
Obviously, right. Look at the bank account.
Exactly. But Amos tells them their religious devotion is just hollow, offensive noise because it is totally disconnected from the ethical treatment of the vulnerable.
Here's where it gets really interesting. How do you actually communicate that to a society entirely built on transactions?
It's tough.
Amos uses this very specific literary tactic to break through their complacency. Throughout the text, you see this repeating rhythmic phrase. He says, "For 3 transgressions and for 4, I will not revoke the punishment."
Ah, yes. The 3-4 formula. It's a brilliant rhetorical device that just builds incredible tension.
When I first read that, I thought it was a literal math equation.
A lot of people do.
Like, God has a spreadsheet, and if you commit 3 sins, you're on thin ice, but oops, you just committed your 4th, now the lightning bolt comes. But it's not a tally, is it?
No, it is not about keeping score at all. It's a poetic way of expressing that a dam is about to burst. 3 represents completeness, a full measure.
Okay.
And adding 4 indicates an overflow. It means the sins of the people haven't just piled up, they have literally breached the banks. It's a tipping point where divine patience has been entirely exhausted.
And what exactly are the sins that break the dam? It's not about using the wrong incense at the altar, right?
Not at all.
This brings up the idea of the text acting as a covenant enforcement document.
Yes, that's a key concept.
Because Israel had this unique relationship with God, a covenant, but this contract explicitly required the protection of the weak, the orphan, the widow, the poor. So, is Amos essentially walking into the Northern Kingdom acting as a divine prosecuting attorney? Like, is he suing the affluent citizens for breach of contract because they prioritize their own luxury, their winter houses and ivory beds over human life?
I absolutely love the prosecuting attorney analogy because that is exactly the function of his rhetoric.
It makes so much sense.
He is actively indicting a society that has allowed extreme materialistic prosperity to mask deep moral decay. He is bringing a lawsuit against them on behalf of the poor, and he delivers this indictment using an incredibly diverse toolkit of genres.
So he doesn't just stand on a soapbox and yell for 9 chapters.
Far from it. He uses oracles against the nations, which is actually a fascinating trap.
A trap.
Yeah. He starts by circling the geopolitical map, condemning all the neighboring countries, Syria, Philistia, Moab, for their war crimes.
Oh, I see. So the Israelite audience would have been cheering him on.
Right.
Like, get him, Amos. Tell those guys how bad they are.
Exactly. Until he suddenly pivots and drops the hammer on Israel itself, using the exact same formula.
Oh, man. That's harsh.
It is. He uses sarcastic funeral dirges, literally mourning the fall of a city that hasn't even been attacked yet. And he recounts these 5 vivid, deeply symbolic visions.
Those visions are where his agricultural roots really shine through, I think.
Oh, definitely.
He doesn't use lofty, abstract theology. He uses everyday objects. The plumb line vision is my favorite. He sees God holding a plumb line, which is just, a string with a weight at the bottom used by builders to see if a brick wall is perfectly vertical.
Right. It's an objective standard of measurement. Amos uses it to measure how crooked society has become. The wall might look totally fine from a distance, but the plumb line proves it is leaning so far it's destined to collapse.
He also sees a basket of summer fruit, which sounds lovely until you realize what summer fruit actually does in the ancient heat.
It is overripe. It looks appealing on the outside, much like their booming economy, but it is one day away from rotting completely. The people are basically ripe for judgment.
Wow. And amidst all this intense poetry, we get a sudden flash of real narrative drama.
Yes, chapter 7.
There is this tense face-to-face showdown with Amaziah, the high priest of the royal sanctuary at Bethel. Amaziah is the ultimate establishment figure, and he basically tells Amos, pack your bags, go back to Judah, and earn your bread there. Stop prophesying here and disturbing the peace.
Amaziah treats him like a professional, paid prophet.
Yeah.
Just a mercenary stirring up trouble for money.
Right.
And Amos's reply is devastating. He essentially says, I'm not a professional prophet. I don't belong to your guilds. I'm a herdsman and a fig dresser. I didn't want this job, but God commanded me to speak.
Gives me chills.
It is a raw, powerful confrontation between the wealthy religious establishment and the radical outsider.
It's incredible to me that a text with this much fire is categorized as one of the minor prophets in the biblical canon. I always thought that meant they were like the B team.
That is a very common misconception. The title minor prophet is purely of the brevity of the scroll.
Oh, just the length.
Yeah, it simply means the book is shorter than the massive scrolls of Isaiah or Jeremiah. It has absolutely nothing to do with the importance of his message. Historically and theologically, Amos is a heavyweight. As a text, it is foundational for everything that comes after.
So we have this divine prosecuting attorney armed with a plumb line, holding up a mirror to a corrupt society.
Yes.
But ancient rabbinic tradition and modern literary scholars agree on something really fascinating about how this book functions. They call the text open.
Right.
It's not just a historical logbook about a society that collapsed 2,800 years ago.
To read Amos simply as a history of an 8th century geopolitical conflict is to miss the entire point of the text. It is a highly dynamic document.
Because it's open.
Because it is open. Yes, it lacks a neat, comfortable resolution for its original targets. Instead, it actively challenges the reader, whether that reader was a refugee in Judah decades later or someone listening to a deep dive today, to apply its standard of justice to their own social context.
It forces you out of the audience and into the crosshairs.
Exactly.
It demands that you look beneath the surface of your own nation's economic booms. Are the vulnerable actually protected? Or are we just feeding the vending machine gods of our own era, assuming our prosperity proves we're righteous?
It's a very uncomfortable mirror. But while the bulk of the book is undeniably focused on this impending doom and systemic injustice, it is crucial to recognize how it concludes. The final verses of Amos, chapter 9, pivot dramatically to a message of restoration.
So it's not just pure nihilism. It balances the doom with hope.
For the prophetic tradition, judgment is almost never an end in itself. Total destruction is not the goal.
What is the goal, then?
The judgment is a severe, shocking wake-up call, like a defibrillator to the heart of society. The ultimate goal is always to bring the people back into a right relationship with God, which, as Amos insists from chapter 1, is completely inseparable from a right relationship with their neighbors.
So, what does this all mean? If we step back and synthesize everything we've explored today, we see a truly remarkable story of disruption. We have Amos, a humble sheep farmer and fig picker from the South, who travels into the glittering, wealthy, complacent North.
Right.
He bridges the gap from the old oral traditions to become the first writing prophet, setting a literary and moral standard that endures to this day.
And his enduring legacy is the complete rejection of the transactional grammar of his day.
In a world where religion was entirely about keeping a cosmic vending machine happy through sacrifices and rituals, Amos declared that all of it was meaningless if it wasn't paired with social justice.
Beautifully said.
He targeted a society blinded by its own economic prosperity, unable to see the rot at its core. He insisted that you cannot claim to love God while simultaneously crushing the poor.
Which leaves us with a fascinating application of this open text.
Let's hear it.
Amos used the vivid, everyday agricultural imagery of his time, plumb lines, summer fruit, roaring lions, to perfectly diagnose the ills of an 8th century society. It raises an important question for all of you listening to ponder.
Okay.
If the Book of Amos challenges readers to look at their own social contexts, what kind of imagery would a modern-day Amos use to critique our society today? What are the plumb lines and summer fruits of our modern, industrialized, hyper-connected world?
Man, now that is something to think about the next time you hear someone bragging about the stock market at a corporate gala.
It really is.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the Book of Amos. We've loved unpacking this with you, and we'll catch you on the next one.